Welcome to our discussion today, and this is on the topic of hybrid working and collaboration. We've got a group of people that have joined us for this panel discussion, and this is being recorded on behalf of the Nuclear Sector Skills Group, and it's going to be released as part of the Inclusion Week. We hope that through our discussion today, you might learn something that will be of use to you as you step up to the challenges that you face with hybrid working and collaboration in this new world in which we're facing today. And a sort of replication of that real world right here and right now. We've got panel members here, some of whom you can see, some of whom you can't. Some can join by telephone only, and one who hasn't even managed to join us yet because they're having IT issues. So, you know, this is real life. This is a live recording here of this discussion. So delighted to introduce everybody today. I'm your facilitator, Lucy Harrison. And we'll just go around the room really and have a quick chat with everybody and find out who we've got here. Lloyd, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a bit of a background?
Hey, will do. So I'm Lloyd. I'm head of digital and innovative learning at EDF Energy. So I work in our HR department. The team I lead, as you might guess from the title, is a bunch of digital natives. However, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been on a journey with our business and our EIT partners to understand some of the challenges that our employees have faced in collaborating and using digital tools. And hopefully I can share some of the successes that we've had from that.
Brilliant, thank you, Lloyd. I shall look forward to that. And Chris, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Chris Biles. I'm the head of the Submarine Delivery Agency Resilience team. So my team provides the policy guidance, support and training to the SDA to enable it to develop and embed resilience. So really the function of my team is to enable and support SDA teams to continue operating no matter what happens, and to make sure that we have the policies and process there to support the teams to do that.
Brilliant. I guess you've had quite a challenging time in the last 18 months as well then.
It's been a busy time, yeah.
Fantastic. Adam, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, Lucy. Yes, my name's Adam Rain. I head up the IT organisation here at Rolls-Royce Submarines Limited. So we are part of the wider Rolls-Royce family, but obviously support the Ministry of Defence in respect to the fleet of boats or submarines that we have supporting the UK government. My purpose is to drive the innovation of IT across our organisation, and here today just to talk to you about some of the experiences over the last few months through the pandemic that have been caused by challenges with collaboration, which we're experiencing a little of this afternoon.
We are indeed. Fabulous. Thank you, Adam. We are hoping that Helen Cassidy will be able to join us as well from LLWR, but that will be subject to IT allowing her to at some point. So you might suddenly see her pop up on the screen and go, where are we? But that's life. So just to start us off then, a bit of a conversation about what are the kind of issues that you've been experiencing with this move to hybrid working? What are the things that it's throwing up for you? Adam, do you want to tell us a bit about the kind of things you've been facing?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think probably the biggest constraint that we have here within submarines is the fact that much of the data that we use, unsurprisingly, is classified. So having a conversation from a classified business with somebody that isn't operating in that territory is challenging. So obviously, you know, upon pain of death, basically, we have to ensure that we don't suffer data leakage. That's the last thing that we want as a business. And we operate in our business at different levels of collaboration. So, you know, collaborating even from an internal perspective can be challenging when we have people operating in different spheres within the organisation, never mind dealing with people outside of the organisation. So, you know, whether that's working with colleagues and collaborating with colleagues in our wider PLC organisation who use different devices, have different solutions, or collaborating as we are here with external colleagues across the industry, and trying to share conversations, video, content kind of thing. And all of those have been quite challenging for us over the last 12, 18 months to solution and improve on. And we're not there yet. I think that's fair comment. I think we all start from a different place. So here in Rolls-Royce Submarines, for example, prior to the pandemic, we had absolute minimal, almost non-existent remote working capabilities. And what I mean by that is a very small handful of people who travelled frequently had some sort of remote connectivity device or solution, to a point where in the early stages of the pandemic, we rolled out just short of 2,500 remote working solutions to our employees, and we're building on the back of that continually, and trying to safeguard the data that's on those devices, and ensure that we can improve the experience of our end users and customers.
Thank you. And it's interesting because I'm here nodding away as you're talking, and then remembering that you're on the phone and you can't actually see me. So
yeah, it's part of the classification challenge.
Absolutely.
I think that's fair. I think obviously I'm sat in my office, so throughout the pandemic I've been office based largely. I have had flexibility to work from home, but I'm in the office the majority of the time. In my office, on the walls, there's classified material, so I can't have a video operating because that would mean you can see what's on my walls, which may be classified. Similarly, if I want to share content with you, again, from a data leakage perspective, that's not that easy, because I could easily share with you a classified document that would involve a security breach. So these are the kind of challenges that we certainly face, and I know colleagues on this call will also.
So, Chris, is that something that you found difficult as well in your?
Yeah, definitely. So there are, of course, many benefits of hybrid working, which we'll probably cover later. But from the point of view of looking at some of the challenges that we've had, certainly some of the people that I've spoken to in the submarine delivery agency, that's a real issue. So there's a lack of opportunity in some areas to have secure IT to work from home. So and that has prevented some from having conversations at high levels, or conversations potentially with contractors. So yes, that has been an area that has been a challenge. There are some.
Sorry to interrupt you there. What's been the impact of that, Chris, of not being able to have those conversations?
So the impact is that teams have had to get innovative. So it's either a case of finding other ways to do business, or it's a case in some situations to maybe reschedule work, or to find a different way. So I mean, obviously there's only so much I can say at this classification, and indeed that leads into another point that I was going to make, was that similar to Adam, I have a government provided laptop. So mine is a mod laptop, which doesn't support Zoom. So the policy or the guidance is specifically that for security reasons, Zoom isn't allowed to be used on those government provided laptops. So for a meeting or a session like this one, for example, we have to use personal devices. Now, that's not a problem for those people that have access to a personal device, but for some people it's not ideal. Some people don't have a suitable setup at home for video conferencing, or they may not have the right desk environment, for example. So that is one issue. And also what we found is that training providers, particularly external training providers, quite often rely on software that is not compatible for laptops, mod laptops. So of course an important part of developing teams and staff is to invest in their training, and sometimes we found that the only way that people can do that is by using IT other than the IT that they've been provided for their job. So they're using their own private IT, and of course some people are happy to do that, some people aren't, or they don't have access to it. So yes, I would definitely echo what Adam was saying there. The other issue, which isn't, it's not a constant challenge, but it does present challenges sometimes, which is when the VPN drops out. So that's our virtual private network. So I'm sure that all of you have experienced that or something similar. Halfway through a Skype conversation or a Teams meeting, and the VPN drops out. So it doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, that can be inconvenient. And again, sometimes with bandwidth, appreciating that there are times of the day that are busier than others. So sometimes in the morning, response rates can be a bit slower, or maybe loading documents can be slower. So those are perhaps lesser order issues, but nevertheless, they all sort of add to the challenges around hybrid working.
Okay. And so out of that, how does that impact on inclusion? Bear in mind, this is part of Inclusion Week. These difficulties that you have, the technical difficulties of being able to communicate across different spheres of working, being able to even get onto your laptops if you're working from home, and be able to access your work at all, to be able to safeguard the information, to be able to, have to think of other ways of doing things. There's incompatibility, and then obviously the VPN or the Wi-Fi dropping out. How does that impact on inclusion?
So in my view, the biggest impact is people not having access to IT at home to join Skype meetings, Zoom meetings, or attend training that we can't access on our mod laptops. So, we've been provided with a very good resource in the mod laptops, and it allows us to work from home, which is for many a really good benefit. It brings benefits like work-life balance and others, which we'll probably cover later. But in my view and my experience of my own personal experience and talking with others, in terms of inclusion, that for me is probably the biggest issue, that some people are excluded from training or from meetings like this because they don't have access to a personal device, or their personal device is maybe a bit older in technology and doesn't support various programs. So that's my experience.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think I would build on that, Lucy, and just say, we saw a lot in the press through the first and second waves of the pandemic with school children working from home, and many people found themselves in a similar situation to what Chris has just described.
I know for at this end, it was we had kids working in two different rooms, and then me in the office, and then other half upstairs, and trying to have the bandwidth to be able to do that. It's well nigh impossible.
So to balance that, I would say that a lot of time and resources and effort has been put into ensuring that people have had the right furniture, for example, to be able to work from home, to make sure that people with reasonable adjustments have been able to haven't been at a disadvantage. And I know from having been involved in some of the teams that have managed this for the SDA and also for DES, the Defence Equipment Support, a lot of time and effort has been put into making sure that nobody's been disadvantaged from that point of view. I think so from the equipment, and having desks or chairs made available and delivered to their homes, and all the keyboards if they needed them for reasonable adjustments. So that's been, I think, outstanding. I think what we're talking about here in terms of Zoom and not being able to access some of the training is more around security constraints, and that's a little bit of a different issue, because obviously they're quite rigid for understandable reasons, and therefore there's we have a new joiner.
We do, yes. Thank you, Chris. And so, hi, Helen. Really pleased that you could join us. And so sorry.
I can only apologise for the difficulties there have been so far, but I am here and enthusiastic and ready.
Well, this is, we were just saying earlier, this is absolutely indicative of our current hybrid working situation. That some of us having IT problems, some of us can only dial in on the phone, etc., etc. We were just discussing, Helen, some of the some of the issues that and challenges that people are facing with this move to hybrid working. And it just kind of hearing some of those technical challenges and the challenges of not having people, some people unable to attend. Is that the same kind of thing that you've been facing at LLWR?
I think so. LLWR is an interesting example in the nuclear sector. We have two sites. So we have an operational site and we have another facility, which is where our functions and kind of external stakeholder facing teams sit. And so, as you can imagine, there are some jobs which are nigh impossible to do remotely. So it's a bit difficult to drive a forklift truck around and in place waste, difficult to do the big construction stuff. So we have a range of jobs that absolutely need to have people on site in place to do those. But then we have a really large cohort in our business, in functions, in waste management services, in our programs, etc., that can work remotely. And so I think the problems that we have in terms of remote hybrid working are myriad, I think, as a consequence of that. There are the technical difficulties, if you will. We got over, I think, some of those quite quickly. COVID has been a very challenging time, understandably. There's to call it a silver lining is strong, but the opportunity that's arisen out of that is we had to really quickly be able to adapt our IT systems. We had to give out a kind of mass laptops and Surface devices so that people could work from home. We had to really quickly find a way to be able to give them the right equipment that they needed to work safely from home. And so we were able to get to really high 80%, 86, 88% productivity really quickly through COVID. And in the post-COVID environment, we've been able to maintain really high levels of productivity. So actually the technical issue perhaps has been slightly less than some of the cultural ones, I would say. And I think there are cultural issues in terms of how do you manage new starters and new people into your business? How do you engage with them to make them feel part of your business, to take on your value set, to kind of take on your standards and expectations, behaviours? How do you make them feel included and like they belong? And belonging is really important in terms of how you make them kind of work in a good kind of team dynamic. How do you drive consistency and fairness and meritocracy in an environment where different teams, and I think this is the same for a lot of organisations, where we're not homogenous. We are made up of a lot of different teams that do different things and have different requirements. My team, so I'm one of my myriad roles, is I'm in charge of the National Waste Programme at LWR. We could probably get away with not seeing each other together, working together in an office for months. In terms of we've managed to kind of move to new technology and the way we use that really well. There are teams though that really need to see each other, I wouldn't say necessarily every day, but they need to be able to see each other and work in an office environment a couple of days a week. Yeah. And so how do you come up with a system which feels fair for everybody when it looks like different people are being managed differently, particularly when you have some people, like I say, down on site who doing really important jobs but have to be in every day. How does that feel fair against? I suppose it's how do you break that culture of a view of working from home being the cushy, easy option?
That's a good point. So just to kind of pull together some of the themes that are coming out here then, if I've got these right, if I haven't, please do tell me. So what I'm hearing is the issues of security access, how do we have conversations across different security levels? The issue of voice and attendance, so people not being able to attend because not being able to access for various technological reasons, and so therefore their voice isn't heard and they're not included. This issue of induction, bringing new people, the cultural issues of induction, bringing new people in, and then fairness. This piece about how do you treat different people differently and it still feels fine. So Lloyd, I'm going to ask you, from a point of view of your organisation at EDF, what have you done? Tell us some stories of kind of how you've approached some of these different things and what's worked and what hasn't worked as well.
Yeah, sure. So very quickly to add some of the issues, we've got, like many of the people here, several networks for one organisation, which provides a wonderful, it's both a gift and a curse. That's what I say. I think one of the key things we've done to reinforce to our colleagues is just remembering these things are tools. All of these things that on one level, an office is a tool, isn't it, to achieve something. And I think what we've been able to do is work with our colleagues in our generation businesses and those working in particular on the Hinkley Point C side, to work with them to understand what are they looking for from a given tool. What do you want to achieve from that? And going on that journey, then bringing them together with our IT colleagues to go through all of the necessary steps to unlock the tools, and then work on the training element as well. Because like many organisations we've heard here, our IT departments have been inundated, haven't they? Swamped, and just trying to say, look, this may not appear really critical. However, they're going to need this for the nuclear operator training program or whatever it may be. So understanding what we want from the tool, first of all, working with our IT colleagues. I mean, one of the challenges is as well, and I'll also add on, is this we haven't discussed yet, is this digital skills. As soon as we went into lockdown, your experience was as good as, on one level, your teams and or your managers' experience with these digital tools. And that was just one big horrible diagnostic assessment that went into practice in over a week or two. So quite quickly, we go back to this point of objective, saying, look, if you are on one level, if you are just having a catch up with someone and you're not talking about nuclear sensitive information, guess what? You go for a walk. You could go for a walk and use WhatsApp or another, and just trying to simplify things for people as much as possible. Because the key thing for a number of our colleagues, it's remembering we're talking about tools and restrictions, but it's the people. The people are the most important, and their experience with training. Absolutely, though, that all sounds wonderful, but our individual experience is individual. And I think one of the things we've always done in our team and departments, we're trying to help our colleagues with, is encouraging to have those conversations with your teams. What does success look like? What does fairness look like for you? And just having a kind of verbal agreement and contract. And I mentioned earlier that we are a digital native team. Maybe not everyone in the team is, but we're probably more advanced than others. But we still constantly revisit that conversation. Just this week, we've had a meeting in Newcastle, and for whatever reason, others couldn't attend. And we've been able to work in a hybrid way and have some people dialing and have what we hope was as close as a seamless meeting, to constantly have that conversation. And that conversation might be about the tools. It might well be about people's capability or skills. So we've heard sometimes, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for people to constantly have to be responding to Microsoft Teams messages, understanding, are we in Teams? Are we in Zoom? Are we on Skype? And just, it might sound simple, but keep revisiting that. Even the concept of cameras on versus cameras off, if you can have that conversation, and you can always have your cameras on. Because, I mean, you asked a question a minute ago about inclusion. If we can get this right, it has the opportunity to be as inclusive as we can be. Some of our surveys, in particular, people have declared that they're introverts, and actually this has been great for them, for their energy levels. It's been completely different. But also, for people doing the school runs, myself included, if we're designing, and I'll go on to away from the tools and into kind of learning and development and training, if we can understand the tools and understand some design principles, we can look at asynchronous techniques. Do we always have to be flicked on at the same time? Right here, right now, we're pre-recording this, aren't we? So people are going to be able to engage with us when we're not even showing it to them live. So those are some of the things.
Brilliant. So what I'm hearing there is thinking about what we're looking for from the tool, so that you can unlock them and simplify them and keep it so that everyone can, you're actually still achieving what you need to be achieving from it. Considering people's experience, and both at a general level and at an individual level, and making sure people still have these conversations, but being aware that people are getting overwhelmed and with all the different things. Is there anything anyone would like to add to that? The kind of solutions you've found so far?
Yeah, hi, it's Chris here. So just interesting listening to Lloyd there, and one of the things he mentioned about the colleagues who may normally identify as introverts have felt that they've had more of a voice, and that's a message that I've had as well back from some of the business, that perhaps those who would have been quieter in the office environment have felt more included, or they felt like they've had more of a platform to have a voice. So I'm not a psychologist, I don't know why that is, but that's just, I thought, an interesting observation, a bit of feedback that I had.
Mm.
I think, Lucy, I'd also just like to put a bit of a build on that in terms of not necessarily what have we done, but what are we planning on doing perhaps in the future. Okay. And I think, some of the next steps are around on constraining some of the collaboration aspirations we have. And a lot of that will be around identity access management. So, and what do I mean by that? We, as an IT community, we need to know, who is consuming our IT, where they are, and what they have access to. And at the moment, that they're the constraining factors. But the introduction of identity access management as a capability will allow us to have more insights into, who people are, where they're working from, and therefore what access they can have. And a real example of that is using myself. If I'm here in my office and I have access to secret data, then I will be able to do that. If I'm working from home or connecting in from a coffee shop, that's certainly not the case, and it would constrain access. And at the moment, you're not able to do that on the same device. So, for example, if you want to access secret data, you would need to be in an office that's accredited, that's using a fixed device. But I think in the future, we will get to a point where you can have a remote working device of some description, whatever that may be, and we will know who you are, we'll know where you're coming in from, we'll know what security access you've got, and therefore I can feasibly see people operating at that sort of level away from the work setting in the future. Because I think to the point that Helen made, there's a vast difference between those that operate in an operational capacity and those that operate more in the support functions, that it's easier to work remotely from site.
Just to build on Adam's point and reiterate what I said earlier, I think, and that's something we're doing now, is trying to work closely with our IT partners to understand, what are the next steps, and then designing interventions where people can upskill and become aware with the tools and have a play around. Because one risk in the future is we have everything deployed, but then back to that point, we don't have that capability. And maybe there's also the bit of defining what we mean by digital skills beneath that. But I think working some of the central teams, having that connection to the operational part of the business and kind of translating that those IT deployments it's going to be a winner long term.
I wonder as well, I think that there's something quite exciting in blended hybrid working about being able to think really critically about what do you do with the time that you have together. So if I think back to, let's describe that as the before times, working together in an office meant that there were 6 of you, I can reflect on my own experience, 6 of us in an office, all working on different things. And yes, there were moments of what I'd call pure collaboration with that. You were able to turn around and ask your office mates, I'm stuck on X, or what do you think of this? Or has anybody got any ideas for? But for the most part, it was, I think, a very individual, shall we say, experience. I think that what modern blended hybrid working perhaps can do for us is give us an opportunity to really think about, what do we do with that time, that face-to-face time when we're together? If we get face-to-face time, and I really do think it's important that we have that, I think there's a richness of conversation that you can have face-to-face that's much more difficult in a virtual environment. Does that give us an opportunity to really think differently and critically about how do we use that time to do proper collaborative, collective working that then enables us, gives us the tools and base to go away and then do our own remote working the rest of the time, kind of working off that. And I think that's something that certainly we're on the start of our journey with that, I think, from an LLWR perspective. But I think something that really excites me about how we can do blended working moving forwards.
Definitely. Has anyone got any stories of if they succeeded in that at any point?
Nothing massive, just tiny iterations. That's a great point by Helen, because then it makes us think about what we do with the other time, and do we always need to be a meeting? And suddenly people weren't doing the school runs, and that time was filled up with Zoom stuff. So we actually took we had our IT colleagues share some information about really simple things, like if your meeting is set as a default 1 hour, could you put it to 45, or 30 minutes to 20 minutes? Just little things like that. But when we've connected physically in person for meetings, yeah, really, what is the purpose of this, and how can we use the time as best possible?
Brilliant.
Yeah, there are some considerations. So, I mean, one thing that I would throw in that we're in the middle of at the moment is a whole load of maintenance and patching across our estate. So, if you're not coming into the site and connecting to the network physically, we're still going to have to maintain your device and apply security patches and upgrades and all of the good stuff that the technology teams have to do. And they need to be planned in as well. So we've had quite a few conversations with our employees around, these things are happening at this frequency. Please, can you do them, out of the working day, because it will have an impact on our IT setup within our business, but equally it will do in your home setting as well. You need to think about these things now, because it's more complicated than it ever was.
I mean, we're certainly pivoting towards, again, early in the journey, but pivoting towards trying to set almost a kind of minimum expectation for the amount of time that you spend in the office, and that's really driven by trying to get teams in to spend an amount of time in the office together on a periodicity, on a frequency that works best for them and their needs. And I think that if we can think about this cleverly, that enables us to kind of match up with some of those structural technological things that need to happen. We can remind them that they might need to plug into the network for X amount of time during that day, so that they can get things downloaded, etc. A reminder that they can go and see person X or Y to kind of cross those particular things off. That might be a training thing that they can drop into, etc. Again, to me, that's about how you kind of build a rich experience for time in the office, so that you can get the most out of it in a way that we wouldn't have thought of before.
Brilliant. So if you were to kind of highlight to me just briefly what have been the benefits, or what do you think are the benefits coming, if they're not there yet, of this more hybrid working, this move from everybody working at home to now being a bit more hybrid with it all? What are the benefits of that?
I think that it helps us to refoster some of those internal relationships and that kind of sense of community. Again, I think some of that, again, kind of variability, dare I say it, kind of before, when everybody's spoken remotely about how individual managers and leaders have kind of come to that. In my team, we have a vibrant WhatsApp group. I mean, I say vibrant, it's mostly people complaining that their IT isn't working. However, that is used to kind of encourage some group solution finding. So I think in terms of encouraging group problem solving, it's quite a positive thing. It has made us think about how we have a daily kind of team keep in touch meeting that we didn't have before. That's to kind of try and give us that, spinning the chair around in the office moments to kind of be able to kind of get things from each other that we need, etc. So whilst we have put things in place in a non-hybrid setting to try and bring in some of the better things about being in the office, I think what hybrid working, if it's done properly, should give us is something like the best of both worlds. So, as I say, kind of the richest possible, the most beneficial possible kind of time in the office. So you're squeezing the most value out of that as you can do. But allied with all of those benefits that you do get from home working, for those that are able to work from home, you know, I do have to underline that. So those benefits of flexibility, as Lloyd says, you know, the ability to do the school run, dare I say it, to be in the house when the DPD driver comes to drop off the parcel. There are some real benefits in that. To be able to have focused time where you can focus on getting focused work done. Where it's a again, as others have noted, that it's an atmosphere where extroverts and introverts are not necessarily shortchanged from the working experience more. But that's alongside those benefits you get from being face to face. If we do it properly, though, because, you know, again, it's avoiding the working in the office. It's about avoiding, I think, perhaps the drift to working in the office becoming more the norm again. I think the thing about kind of a move to hybrid working is that it takes some discipline and rigor to keep going. You know, that there is the potential that over time it kind of slowly migrates to how it was before. And so it's and we lose benefits from that.
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, I think I'd build on that.
You, Adam. Yeah,
sorry, Lucy. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I'd build on that. I think from a business perspective, the more flexible working option does give you the ability to target a different audience recruitment-wise. So in theory, and I think we're starting to see, we can attract better talent. So it's unconstraining the target audiences we would be looking at. I think the other point I'd make as well, I think you have to get the balance right. And, you know, I think it was Helen that, again, referred to earlier about the fact that, you know, some roles are conducive to flexible working and others not. You do have to bear in mind and be cognizant of the fact that you don't want second-class citizens within your workforce. So, you know, you don't want a situation where half the workforce have got total flexibility and are seen to reap the rewards of this, and others that are heavily constrained, because that's not going to be good for business morale.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Anyone else like to build on those points?
I can offer my perspective. I mean, to touch on what we've said already, I think lots of organisations have had to go through the exercise of really saying, how do we want to work? And I think it's been an interesting conversation, and within reason, to some of the points we've just heard, for me, it's about the work we do, and it's become less and less about where we do it and when. So it's focusing on the outputs. And I think from an inclusion perspective, if you've got different particular needs, that's wonderful. Could I have always done the school run before? Probably. Did I feel pressured to get in work earlier, and did I have to travel? Yes, I did. So it's enabled me to offer something else to the other part of my life, and I wonder if that's the same for others as well. And I think that's a huge benefit. Yeah,
Chris, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so just to sort of reflect on something that Helen said earlier, I think it's provided an opportunity for, or indeed people have been examining much more closely what we're doing and why we're doing it. So, and it's provided a catalyst for reprioritization as well. So it's been a real change in work pattern, the culture and behaviours. We've all had to learn how to adapt and be flexible during the lockdown period. And certainly from my experience and people I've been talking to, that forced, if you like, a refocus on what we were doing it and why we were doing it, and indeed how we were doing it. So that's been an opportunity actually to perhaps be more efficient and to be more innovative as well. That's been something that we've had to do. I think something else that I very much noticed as a positive thing, particularly certainly in the SDA, is that it has resulted in much more of a focus on well-being. So there's been a real noticeable effort by senior leaders, by the comms teams, and by managers to ensure that there's been lots of regular comms issued to people to make sure that they know what's been going on. I know this forum is about hybrid working, but in the past 18 months that's been inextricably linked with COVID, of course. So we've had lots of comms about COVID and how we're dealing with that. That's a separate issue. But now we're seeing that the pattern of comms is shifting more towards around supporting people to come back to work in a way that works for them as an individual and their work-life balance, and in a way that works for the business as well. So it's about providing information on what tools there are, what behaviours are expected and encouraged. And there's a lot of work now about going on to build a culture that what are we going to look like in the next 6, 12, 18 months when we return into what will now be the new normal, because it will be definitely different to what it was before COVID. And the intention is that we'll try to make hybrid working the new normal. Obviously, we talked about some of the issues and challenges that people are facing, but in time they will be solved. So it's definitely presenting a new, an exciting opportunity for people. It's going to take time, but I think we're already seeing benefits.
Thank you. Really interesting conversation. And so just to sort of close this up really is just to, if we go around the room and just from each of you, what one recommendation, because, you know, this is some amazing things that you've all pulled out there of the benefits of this hybrid working, and if we get it right. So what was one recommendation, just quickly, one recommendation that you would give to anybody listening to this of what they can do, a step that they can take along this way to getting this right? Who would like to go first with their recommendation?
Quite happy to, Lucy. So I think for me, I'd say to people, ask yourself two questions. The first question is, what is it you need to collaborate on? So do you just need to collaborate over voice? Do you need to include video? Do you need to share content? Do you need to share data? Do you need it for another purpose like training, as referred to earlier? And the second question that you need to ask yourself is who is it that you need to collaborate with? And what are their constraints associated to it, like the use of personal devices, like perhaps their security posture, etc. And I think if you ask those two questions ahead of determining what medium to use, it will improve the experience of people.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you very much, Adam. I should take that one away myself. Fantastic. Who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I don't mind going next. So
thank you, Chris.
My recommendation would be to be proactive and seek information on what IT and support is available there to help with hybrid working, because it will be a fact of life going forward that for most people, either they will be doing it themselves or they'll be engaging with people who are doing it. So keep informed, get involved, understand what the benefits are, understand what the limitations are, because your experience may not be the same experience as people you're working with. So just be flexible and be mindful that maybe not everyone has the same access to IT that you do. But mainly just, I think, keep informed of what IT and behaviours support hybrid working.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
I'll go next. Mine would be, let's say, to build on the 2 points, you've got to the place where you know what tool you're going to use or using tools. It's just be really patient with yourself. Remember this place of trial and error, and just talk about your experience. If you're struggling, you know, I consider myself I'm quite confident with digital tools. Quite often know I'll mess something up or communicate in the wrong channel or download it on the wrong computer, whatever. And I think just try and find peace with that. And if you can, share your experience with others, because I think we're all really used to controlling the controllables in an office and environment, and some of these digital stuff we can't always control. So just be at peace with that, and remember it's trial and error.
Thank you. That's great advice. Yeah, thank you. And Helen?
I think building on some of the conversation there have been around some of the kind of the technological, the working remotely bit of it, I think a recommendation I would really make around that is to think about and to use to deploy some ground rules really for when you're trying to collaborate using digital platforms or doing that kind of online remote working, for meetings, for one-on-one discussions, for small group discussions, the whole gamut of it. You know, set out some expectations about, is it cameras on or cameras off? Is it mute when you're not on? You know, is there a, like I often have before my meetings, a kind of a disclaimer that we really enjoy seeing, you know, pets, children, loved ones, unloved ones, whatever, you know, in the background, you know, recognising that one of the things about hybrid working is we're seeing it's a blurring, I think, of our personal lives and our professional lives in a way that we haven't had before. So let's accept that that blurring happens and let that be part of it.
Brilliant. Well, I would like to thank everybody very much for being a part of this conversation today. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a thing or two. I hope those listening have done too. If you'd like to get involved in the conversation during Inclusion Week, please use the hashtag United for Inclusion on your social media platform of choice. And thank you very much to Lloyd, to Helen, to Chris, to Adam, and to Roger for being our recording specialist today. So thank you very much, and we wish you all the best.